I met a Gypsy.
And so to talk about, like, let's just fast forward to the day a Stark Varg lines up at Anaheim 1 with a top 450 rider on that bike. What's the pathway to get to that, and what does that look like for you guys? Will you be fielding a factory team? Like, is there, do you have a pathway to racing that is in your mind right now?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so we're talking to a lot of the federations globally right now. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. So France has already changed the rules, so we can compete on a national level in France right now.
Yeah.
Italy is giving us a wild card this year. Most likely, they're saying they will change the rules for next year. England is changing the rules now, like within the next couple of weeks, so we can race there. We're talking to FIM, so I think they will change rules, maybe not for next year, but perhaps the year after. That's not confirmed, but that's what I believe. We're talking to the AMA and Feld as well. Maybe 2 years, I would guess as well. I mean, it's also, these are huge corporations that have a big responsibility in CSR. So, how can you not? You have this issue today, that you're not sustainable, and it's a problem. And here you have an opportunity to test sustainability, and most likely it's just going to bring interest. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work out. But how could you say no to that in today's society? I can't see that happening. So I think within 2 years we're going to see racing at the highest level, and meanwhile we're gonna have some national championships. Sweden is also changing the rules as well. I don't know where we are in Australia. I think, actually for Australia, Jeff Lace, you had him on the podcast a few months ago. He has joined as a general manager for Australia. So
wow,
very excited to have him on board.
That is epic. Yeah. He is such a good guy.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's it's part of our super team.
Yeah, you guys could not have picked a better person. Yeah, okay, that's so good.
Thank you. I'm really, really glad to have Jeff on the team. He's fantastic, and I think he's getting started now to talk to the Australian Federation as well as to the dealers to build our presence in Australia and New Zealand as well. So it's a quite clear path to racing, and we're also going to attend some special races, of course, maybe a Red Bull straight rhythm and things like that. So yeah, it's gonna happen pretty fast. We might attend some kind of world championship race some way. We will see. Then it's gonna happen. It's gonna start in some areas and it's gonna grow, and I think we'll see when we see it in MXGP and the AMA Supercross, but I think within 2 years we're gonna see it.
That's pretty exciting. And so how the bike has 80 horsepower. That's the peak number. How does it fit into racing in terms of, like, what have you got to do to this bike? Like, is it unfair to race it against 450s if you're going to enter it into the 250 class? Is there some kind of like restriction? Because essentially it's like you guys have the keys to the thing, so the FIM comes to you and says, hey, it needs to be this many horsepower, or it needs to have this much output, and you guys are like, cool, we can do that. But then essentially you're the ones making it like you can do whatever. So what's that conversation look like of how do you actually make this thing compete fairly against those motorcycles?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, of course. I mean, if you want to control a 250 to see that it's following the regulations, you need to tear off the cylinder head, and you need to measure the stroke and the diameter of the piston to figure out the CCs. So I mean, that's quite a big job for just checking that the bike is legal. You won't do that for every bike every race. You might do it now and then. With electric, you can control so much easier. So we will give access to the federations so that they can access the data wirelessly for each bike, so that they can see exactly how much power you have been using. So they can check after a race what has been your peak power, and they can also check before, of course, but it makes more sense after. So of course we don't have CCs. What we are discussing with the federations now is to set a horsepower limit, which is equivalent to a factory 250 or 450. And I think that's the easiest way. Just same maximum horsepower, and let's see which technology works best.
But I mean, there's kind of an issue there in the sense that the Star Racing Yamaha has more, I'm assuming, peak horsepower than a factory Honda. Like that bike, I mean, you just ride
the 250.
You just ride the stock motorcycle. It's like, oh, this is a way faster motorcycle. So I mean, is it unfair? Like, how do we manage what's fair? Like, because essentially you're bringing a gun to a knife fight. Essentially, if you've got a bike that you could have unlimited power capacity, within reason, obviously. Like a standard 450, let's say like 60, 62 horsepower, and then you guys are coming with 80. So it's like, but doesn't it make sense as a competitor to want to be on a better motorcycle? That's why you would, if you're a privateer lights class rider, you would buy a Yamaha because it's a faster motorcycle stock. So it's like, to just say like, okay, we're just going to have this peak horsepower, it's kind of almost unfair to you guys in a way that's built this more capable motorcycle, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, racing needs to be quite equal to be fun. I mean, if you're way faster, racing will get less interesting. So, of course, we have to, we know every rider that has tested our bike now is faster on the Stark than their 450. So that's a good start. But in the end, I mean, with the 250s, for instance, in the 450 it's more like an open class. I mean, I'm not sure you really need more power. I don't think the 450 class is really the challenge here. But the 250 class, you have an advantage for sure. You can see that with the Star Racing in 250, and so everyone has the same limitations. Like 250cc, that's your limitation. If you can get more power out of it, that's great for you. So I think it would make sense to set the same maximum as the fastest 250. Because that's what everyone can get, essentially. And then if you look at amateurs, a lot of people won't tune their bike. They will have a stock engine, maybe buy a different exhaust, which gives them one more horsepower. But they can tune it. They can get factory modifications similar to that done to their motors if they want to. So if they have that ability, I think guys on an electric bike should have that ability as well to have a similar level. But I think that can be fine-tuned over years, and we need to start. And then if we figure out that the Stark is way too fast, but I think that it will be quite it's going to be good racing.
Well, I mean, you like Josh Hill, when he was on here talking about it, he said you'll pretty much whole shot a 450 every time. And it's like, if we're in that territory, like if you guys just rock up to A1 in 2 years' time and whole shot every single main event for 17 races, I mean, like that I might sound like an idiot right now to some people listening, but that's potentially the world that we're living in. Like for anyone that's driven a Tesla, that's the world that we're about to live in dirt bikes. So it's like, I mean, I just am envisioning some like crazy shit going down that like everyone in the racing community is going to kind of have to scratch their head and be like, how do we deal with this thing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that would be fantastic if that happens for Stark. But I think there are so many variables in racing, that will. That can change those scenarios. Of course, you have an advantage with not having gears, and you have much faster response. You can control the power much better. But this is the advantage of the electric technology. So
there's
if
so
electric
many
technology
advantages.
is better, eventually it's gonna win. But if it wins, it's also proving electric is the future. So then the other brands needs to develop electric bikes. It's the same. if someone is developing better suspension, okay, if you want to continue to compete with these guys, you need to also innovate and build a better suspension. So I think that's what needs to happen. I mean, should we limit technical development because someone is finding a way to make it better? That sounds very strange and very boring.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's not change anything. Let's just ride same bikes as today for the next 50 years. Let's not improve anything. Why? Why would you do that? Racing, for me, racing is R&D. It's to evolve, to find better ways. If you see some riders finding new ways to ride, suddenly James Stewart starts to scrub. Like, what the fuck did he just do? And then everyone is copying that because it's faster. And, it should be the same with the bikes or whatever it is. That's racing.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.